I used to believe that family meant something sacred, that blood was thicker than ambition, stronger than greed. I was wrong. My name is Margot, and I learned the hardest way possible that some people will take everything from you, even the people you share a childhood with, even the ones who know every scar on your heart. My younger sister Isabel taught me that lesson. She didn't just betray me, she dismantled my life, piece by piece, wearing a smile the entire time. And she did it for something as cold and empty as money. For 3 years, I was married to Olivier Beaumont. If you live in Monaco, you know that name. Real estate empire, luxury developments along the French Riviera, a portfolio that stretched from Monte Carlo to Saint-Tropez. Olivier wasn't just wealthy. He was the kind of man whose presence changed the energy in a room. When we met, I was working as a curator at a small art gallery in Fontvieille. He walked in one afternoon, bought a painting without asking the price, and then asked me to dinner. I said no 3 times before I finally said yes. I didn't want to be another conquest. I wanted to be seen. And for a while, I was. Our wedding was intimate, just close family and a handful of friends on a terrace overlooking the harbor. Isabel was my maid of honor. She held my hand that morning, told me how happy she was for me, how much I deserved this. I believed her. I had no reason not to. She was my sister, my only sister. We'd grown up in a cramped apartment in Nice, sharing everything: clothes, dreams, secrets. When our mother died, we only had each other. Or so I thought. The cracks started small. Olivier began working late more often. He'd miss dinners, cancel weekend plans, return home smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. I told myself it was stress. His company was expanding into new markets. He was under pressure. I convinced myself that love meant patience, that marriage meant weathering storms together. I ignored the distance growing between us because I didn't want to admit what I already knew deep down. Then, one evening, I came home early from a work trip to Nice. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I walked through the living room, past the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the glittering coastline, and I heard laughter coming from our bedroom. Not any laughter. Hers. I stood outside that door for what felt like an eternity, my hand on the cold metal handle, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might collapse. Part of me wanted to turn around, walk out, pretend I'd never heard anything. But I didn't. I opened the door. Olivier was sitting on the edge of our bed, half-dressed, his expression frozen somewhere between shock and guilt. And there, standing by the window in my silk robe, was Isabel, my sister. She didn't look surprised. She didn't even look sorry. She just looked at me with this strange mixture of defiance and satisfaction, as if she'd been waiting for this moment, as if she'd wanted me to see. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, trying to process what I was seeing, trying to understand how the 2 people I loved most in the world could destroy me so casually. Olivier started to speak, stumbling over apologies that meant nothing, but I didn't let him finish. I turned and walked out. I didn't take anything with me except my dignity, and even that felt shattered. The divorce was swift. Olivier didn't contest it. I think he was relieved. Within 6 months, he and Isabel were married in a lavish ceremony at the Hôtel de Paris. I wasn't invited, of course. I saw the photos online, plastered across social media and society pages. Isabel in a custom Dior gown, Olivier smiling beside her, both of them basking in the wealth and glamour that now define their lives. People whispered, but in Monaco, scandal fades quickly when you have enough money to drown it out. I rebuilt my life slowly, quietly. I moved to a smaller apartment in La Condamine, threw myself into my work, avoided places where I might run into them. I told myself I'd moved on, that I didn't care anymore. But late at night, when the city lights flickered across my bedroom ceiling and the sound of the harbor drifted through my window, I'd lie awake wondering how someone could betray love so completely, wondering if Isabel had ever really cared about me at all, or if I'd just been an obstacle standing between her and the life she wanted. I never imagined I'd get an answer to that question. I never imagined justice would find its way back to me. But sometimes fate has a way of correcting the scales. Sometimes the universe delivers a reckoning so precise, so unexpected, that all you can do is stand back and watch it unfold. And sometimes the people who hurt you the most end up holding the key to their own destruction. I just didn't know it yet. None of us did. But we would. Soon enough, we all would. How do you survive betrayal when it comes from the person who was supposed to protect you? The call came on a Tuesday morning in late autumn. I was at the gallery, cataloging a new shipment of contemporary pieces from a local artist, when my phone buzzed on the desk. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Telemarketers were relentless in Monaco, but something made me pick up. Margot Leclerc? The voice was formal, clipped, a lawyer's voice. Yes? This is Maître Arnaud from the firm of Dubois and Associés. I am handling the estate of Olivier Beaumont. I need you to come to my office as soon as possible. The words didn't register at first. Estate. Olivier. My brain scrambled to make sense of them. I'm sorry, what? Monsieur Beaumont passed away 3 days ago. There are matters concerning his will that require your immediate attention. The room tilted. I sat down heavily in my chair, gripping the edge of the desk. He's dead? Yes, madame. A heart attack. It was sudden. His tone softened slightly. I understand this is difficult, but the reading of the will is scheduled for Thursday at 2:00. Your presence is required. I hung up in a daze. Olivier was dead. The man I'd once loved, the man who'd shattered my life, gone. I felt a strange hollowness. Not quite grief, not quite relief, just emptiness. I hadn't spoken to him in over 2 years. The last time I'd seen him was across a crowded restaurant terrace, his arm draped around Isabel's shoulders, both of them laughing at something I couldn't hear. I'd left without finishing my meal. Now he was gone, and apparently I was part of his will. The thought made no sense. We'd finalized the divorce cleanly. I'd taken nothing from him except my freedom. What could he possibly have left me? The next 2 days passed in a fog. I went through the motions at work, nodded along to conversations I didn't hear, stared at paintings without seeing them. I didn't tell anyone about the call. What would I even say? That my ex-husband, the one who'd left me for my sister, was dead, and I had no idea how to feel about it? Thursday arrived cold and gray, the kind of day where the Mediterranean looked more steel than blue. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple black dress and coat, nothing too formal, nothing that might suggest I was mourning, because I wasn't. Not really. I was numb. The law office was in a sleek building near the Casino de Monte Carlo, all glass and marble, the kind of place that whispered wealth in every polished surface. I gave my name at reception and was escorted to a conference room on the 3rd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the harbor, or yachts bobbed gently in their slips, indifferent to the drama unfolding above them. Isabel was already there.
She sat at the far end of the long mahogany table. Dressed in black Chanel, her hair pulled back in a severe chignon. She looked thinner than I remembered, her cheekbones too sharp, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion or maybe something darker. When I walked in, she glanced up briefly, then looked away without acknowledging me. No greeting, no recognition, as if I were a stranger. I took a seat as far from her as possible and folded my hands in my lap, willing myself to stay calm. Maître Arnaud entered a moment later, a lean man in his 50s with silver hair and the kind of expression that gave nothing away. He carried a leather portfolio, which he set on the table with deliberate care. "Thank you both for coming," he began, settling into his chair. "I know this is a difficult time. I'll try to make this as brief as possible." Isabelle said nothing. Neither did I. The silence in the room was suffocating. Maître Arnaud opened the portfolio and withdrew a document, scanning it briefly before looking up at us. Monsieur Beaumont's will is relatively straightforward, though there are unusual elements. I'll read the relevant sections now.
He cleared his throat and began. "To my wife, Isabelle Beaumont, I leave the gold earring she left in my car on the evening of May 14th, the night our affair began. May it serve as a reminder of how this all started." The words hung in the air like a blade. Isabelle's face went white. I stared at the lawyer, unable to process what I'd just heard. A single earring. That was it. That was all. Maître Arnaud continued, his voice steady, clinical. "To my former wife, Margot Leclerc, I leave the entirety of my estate, all properties, financial assets, business holdings, and personal effects. Everything." The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to anchor myself. Everything. He'd left me everything. Not Isabelle. Me. Isabelle shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is a mistake. It has to be." He wouldn't. He couldn't. Maître Arnaud's expression remained impassive. "I assure you, Madame Beaumont, the will is legally binding. Monsieur Beaumont was of sound mind when he drafted it 6 weeks ago. There are no grounds for contestation." 6 weeks? Isabelle's voice cracked. "He changed his will 6 weeks ago and didn't tell me?" The lawyer said nothing. He didn't need to. The truth was written in the silence, in the sharp lines of the document, in the cold finality of Olivier's last decision. He'd known. He'd known what was coming, and he'd made his choice. Isabelle turned to me, her eyes blazing with fury and something that looked almost like desperation. "You did this. You poisoned him against me. You—" "I haven't spoken to Olivier in 2 years," I said quietly. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. Liar. She slammed her hands on the table. "You always wanted this. You couldn't stand that I had everything you lost." "Madame Beaumont," Maître Arnaud interrupted, his tone firm. "I must ask you to compose yourself. This is a legal proceeding." Isabelle stared at him, breathing hard, then at me. For a moment, I saw something flicker across her face, not just anger, but fear, raw, unfiltered fear. Then she turned and stormed out, the door slamming shut behind her. I sat there, frozen, trying to absorb what had just happened. Olivier had given me everything. Not out of love. I wasn't naive enough to believe that. But out of something else. Regret, maybe? Or justice? Or maybe just a final act of honesty after years of lies. Maître Arnaud handed me a thick envelope. "The keys to the properties, account details, everything you'll need. I'll arrange a full briefing next week. Take your time." I nodded, unable to speak. My hands shook as I took the envelope.
Outside the window, Monaco glittered in the afternoon light, beautiful and indifferent, a city where fortunes changed hands and lives unraveled while the sea kept rolling in. I walked out into the cold autumn air, clutching the envelope against my chest, and for the first time in 2 years, I allowed myself to feel something other than numbness. I felt free. But what do you do when the justice you never asked for lands in your lap, and the person who destroyed you loses everything?
I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. My legs carried me down toward the port, past the rows of gleaming yachts and the tourists snapping photos, past the cafes where people sipped espresso and talked about nothing important. I walked until I reached a quiet bench overlooking the water and sat down, the envelope still clutched in my hands. Everything. Olivier had left me everything. The words kept repeating in my mind, but they didn't feel real. None of this felt real. I had spent 2 years trying to erase him from my life, trying to forget the humiliation, the betrayal, the way he'd looked at me that night like I was an inconvenience rather than the woman he'd promised to love forever. And now, in death, he'd handed me his entire world, the penthouses, the bank accounts, the empire he'd built, the same empire Isabel had married him for. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside were documents, keys, a handwritten letter on heavy cream stationery. The handwriting was Olivier's, messy, hurried, nothing like the confident man I'd known. Margot, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I was wrong. About everything. About Isabel. About us. About what mattered. I thought I wanted excitement, something new, something that made me feel alive again. Isabel made me feel young. She made me feel powerful. But she never made me feel seen. Not the way you did. By the time I realized my mistake, it was too late. You'd moved on. You were rebuilding your life without me, and I didn't have the courage to tell you that I destroyed mine. Isabel didn't love me. She loved what I could give her. The money, the status, the life. When I got sick, when the doctors told me I didn't have much time, she didn't ask how I felt. She asked how much was in the offshore accounts. I'm not telling you this to make you pity me. I'm telling you because you deserve to know the truth. You were the only real thing I ever had, and I threw it away for fool's gold. This is my way of making it right, or trying to. I know it doesn't fix what I did, but maybe it gives you back something you lost. Maybe it gives you the life you should have had all along. I'm sorry, Margot, for all of it.
My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You stole everything from me. Enjoy it while it lasts. Isabel, of course. I stared at the message, feeling a strange calm settle over me. She thought I'd stolen from her. She genuinely believed that. In her mind, I was the villain, the obstacle, the thief. She couldn't see or refused to see that she'd destroyed herself. That Olivier's final act wasn't my revenge, it was his. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Instead, I stood up, brushed off my coat, and walked back toward the city center. The reality of my situation was starting to sink in. I owned properties I'd never seen. I had access to accounts I'd never imagined. I controlled an empire I'd never wanted. And somewhere in Monaco, Isabel was spiraling, realizing that all her schemes, all her calculated cruelty had earned her nothing but a single gold earring and a marriage certificate that meant less than the paper it was printed on. Over the next few days, I met with Maitre Arnaud and his team. They walked me through everything: the penthouses in Fontvieille and Larvoto, the villa in Cap d'Ale, the commercial properties scattered along the coast, the investment portfolios, the offshore holdings. The numbers were staggering. I'd gone from living modestly on a curator's salary to having more wealth than I could comprehend. "What do you want to do with it?" Montre Arnaud asked during one of our meetings. I hesitated. Honestly, I didn't know. This wasn't my world. I'd never cared about luxury or status. I'd married Olivier because I loved him, not because of what he could offer me. But now, sitting in a marble-floored office overlooking the harbor, I realized something important. This wasn't just wealth. This was power. The power to rebuild my life on my own terms. The power to never be vulnerable again. I want to keep the gallery and the apartment in Le Condamine. Sell the rest, quietly. I don't want attention. Montre Arnaud nodded. Very wise. I'll handle the transactions personally. As I left his office that afternoon, I felt something shift inside me. For 2 years, I had been the victim, the woman scorned, the sister betrayed, the wife discarded. But that version of me was gone. She died the moment I opened that letter, the moment I realized that Olivier's final gift wasn't just money, it was freedom. I ran into Isabelle a week later, outside a boutique in Monte Carlo. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was messy, her makeup smudged, her designer handbag hanging limply from one arm. When she saw me, she froze. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. I waited for her to say something, to hurl accusations or insults, to do anything that might justify the anger she clearly felt, but she didn't. She just stood there, her eyes hollow, and then she turned and walked away without a word. I watched her go, feeling an unexpected pang of something that might have been pity. She'd won for a while. She'd gotten the life she wanted, the man she wanted, the fortune she'd craved. But in the end, she'd lost everything that mattered. And the worst part was, she still didn't understand why. I continued down the street, the autumn sun warm on my face, and for the first time since that terrible night 2 years ago, I felt something close to peace. But peace, I would learn, is fragile, and some people will do anything to shatter it. Can you ever truly forgive someone who doesn't even understand what they've done wrong?
The weeks that followed felt surreal, like living in someone else's life. I moved through Monaco with a new kind of awareness, not paranoia exactly, but a heightened sense of being watched. People who'd never noticed me before suddenly knew my name. Society acquaintances who'd cut me off after the divorce sent carefully worded messages of condolence about Olivia's death, thinly veiled attempts to reconnect now that I controlled his fortune. I ignored most of them. I had no interest in being part of that world, the one where relationships were transactions and loyalty lasted only as long as your bank balance. Instead, I focused on the gallery, on work that felt real and meaningful. Art didn't lie. It didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. But Isabelle wouldn't let go. She started showing up at places she knew I'd be, the gallery, my favorite cafe near the port, even outside my apartment building. She never approached directly, never said anything, just watched from across the street or from a table in the corner. It was unnerving, this silent presence, this refusal to disappear. I could feel her anger like a physical thing, radiating across whatever space separated us. One evening, I returned home to find her sitting on the steps outside my building. She looked up as I approached, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk," she said. I could have walked past her, ignored her, called security, but something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the faint hope that we could find some kind of closure. Or maybe I just needed to hear her say it, needed her to admit what she'd done, to acknowledge the damage she'd caused. 5 minutes, I said, unlocking the door. That's all you get. She followed me up to my apartment, neither of us speaking. Inside, I hung up my coat and gestured toward the living room. She didn't sit. She stood by the window, her back to me, staring out at the darkening harbor. He wasn't supposed to do that, she said finally, her voice low and bitter. He promised me. He said I'd be taken care of. Taken care of? I kept my tone neutral, even though my heart was pounding. You married him, Isabel. You were his wife. You had access to everything. It wasn't enough. She turned to face me, and I was startled by the rawness in her expression. You don't understand what it's like, Margot. You never did. You were always so content with so little. A small job, a small life. But I wanted more. I deserved more. So you took my husband? He wasn't happy with you. The words burst out of her, sharp and defensive. He told me that. He said your marriage was falling apart, that you barely talked anymore. I didn't steal him. He came to me. I felt a cold, steady anger rising in my chest. You're my sister. Even if everything you just said was true, which it isn't, you're my sister. You were supposed to protect me, not destroy me. I was protecting myself. She took a step toward me, her hands clenched into fists. Do you know what it was like growing up in your shadow? Perfect, Margot. So smart, so talented, so good at everything. Mama always loved you more. That's not true. Yes, it is, her voice cracked. And then you met Olivier, and suddenly you had everything. Money, status, a future. What did I have? Nothing. I was just the pretty little sister, the one people noticed but never took seriously. So yes, I took him. I took what you had because for once I wanted to be the one who mattered. The admission hung between us, raw and painful. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Because beneath her justifications, beneath the jealousy and resentment, there was still the fundamental truth. She had chosen to hurt me. She'd looked at my life, my marriage, my trust, and decided it was worth destroying for her own gain. One evening, I said quietly, "He didn't love you," I said. He told me that in his letter. He said you never loved him either. You loved what he could give you. Isabel's face twisted with something ugly, pain, humiliation, rage. And now you have it all, again. You always land on your feet, don't you, Margot? Even when you lose, you win. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want Olivia's money. I just wanted my life back. Well, congratulations. You got mine instead. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then paused, looking back at me. I hope it makes you happy. I hope it fills whatever hole I left in your perfect little world, because you took everything from me. I took nothing, I said. You lost it yourself. She slammed the door on her way out. I stood in the silence of my apartment, my hands shaking, my chest tight. The confrontation had resolved nothing. If anything, it had made things worse. Isabel wasn't sorry. She wasn't capable of being sorry. In her mind, she was the victim, and I was the villain who'd somehow stolen her fairy tale ending. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the lights of Monaco twinkle in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Isabel was nursing her bitterness, plotting her next move. Because I knew her well enough to know she wouldn't stop. People like her never did. They couldn't accept loss, couldn't admit defeat. They just kept pushing, kept scheming, until they either got what they wanted or destroyed themselves trying. I thought about Olivia's letter, about his regret and his apology. He'd been weak, not evil. He'd made terrible choices, hurt people he cared about, but in the end, he tried to make it right. That doesn't excuse what he'd done, and it gave me something to hold on to, a small, fragile sense that not everyone who betrayed me was beyond redemption. But Isabel was different. She didn't see her betrayal as wrong. She saw it as survival, and that scared me more than any of Olivia's lies ever had. I went to bed that night with my phone on the nightstand, half expecting another threatening message. None came. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over, that Isabel's silence was more dangerous than her anger. And I was right. How do you protect yourself from someone who refuses to see their own guilt? Winter settled over Monaco with unusual cold, bringing gray skies and sharp winds that swept across the harbor. The city's usual glitter felt muted, subdued, as if even the Mediterranean understood that something dark was unfolding beneath the surface. I threw myself into work. The gallery was preparing for a major exhibition, contemporary artists from across Europe, a showcase that would draw collectors and critics from Paris, Milan, London. It was the kind of project that demanded everything I had, and I welcomed the distraction. Better to think about lighting and placement and catalog copy than about Isabel's hollow eyes or Olivier's guilt-stained letter. But distractions only work if you're allowed to stay distracted. It started small. A negative review of the gallery appeared online, anonymous, claiming we sold forgeries. It was absurd. We had documentation and provenance for every piece, but the accusation spread. Then came the messages, dozens of them, sent to artists and potential clients, warning them away from working with us. The gallery's social media was flooded with hateful comments, all from fake accounts, all saying the same things: fraud, liar, thief. Someone was trying to destroy my reputation, and I knew exactly who. I hired a digital security firm to trace the accounts. They worked quickly, efficiently, and within 48 hours, they had an answer. All the messages, all the fake reviews, all the coordinated attacks, they originated from a single IP address. An apartment in Beausoleil, just across the border in France. Isabel's new address. I sat in my office staring at the report, feeling a cold rage settle over me. She wasn't just bitter, she was actively trying to ruin me, to take away the one thing I'd built for myself. The gallery was mine, separate from Olivier's fortune, earned through years of hard work and passion, and she wanted to destroy it out of spite. Maître Arnaud advised me to pursue legal action. We have clear evidence of defamation and harassment. We can file immediately. I considered it. Part of me wanted to see her in court, wanted to watch her face the consequences of her actions. But another part, the part that remembered us as children, sharing secrets under the covers, laughing until we cried, that part hesitated. "Let me talk to her first," I said. "I don't advise that. I know, but I need to try." I drove to Beausoleil on a Saturday morning, the roads slick with rain. Isabel's building was modest by Monaco standards, clean but unremarkable, the kind of place someone lived when they'd fallen from grace. I found her apartment number and knocked. She answered after a long pause, dressed in sweatpants and an oversized sweater, her hair unwashed. She looked shocked to see me, then defensive. "What do you want?" "To understand," I kept my voice calm. "I need to understand why you're doing this." "Doing what?" "Don't." I pulled out my phone, showed her screenshots of the messages, the reviews. "I know it's you. I have proof." For a moment, she looked like she might deny it. Then something in her face crumbled, and she stepped aside, letting me in. The apartment was small, cluttered, nothing like the pristine spaces she'd lived in with Olivier. Dishes piled in the sink, clothes draped over furniture, the air stale and close. She walked to the kitchen and poured herself coffee without offering me any. "I lost everything," she said finally, not looking at me. "Everything I worked for, everything I built, and you got it all. You didn't lose it, you threw it away. There's a difference." "Is there?" She laughed bitterly. "From where I'm standing, it looks the same. I played the game, Margot. I did what I had to survive, and I lost anyway. So forgive me if I'm not feeling particularly charitable toward you right now. Sabotaging my gallery won't bring Olivier back. It won't change the will. It just makes you look pathetic." Her eyes flashed. "Pathetic? You think I'm pathetic? You have no idea what it's like to have nothing. You've always had something to fall back on. Your talent, your dignity, your moral high ground. What do I have? I'm 31 years old, Margot. I have no career, no savings, no prospects. I'm married for security, and now I don't even have that. So yes, maybe I'm trying to hurt you. Maybe it makes me feel better to watch you struggle, even a little, because you deserve to know what it's like to lose something you care about. I stared at her, this person who looked like my sister, but sounded like a stranger. You're right, I said quietly. I don't know what it's like to have nothing, but I do know what it's like to be betrayed by someone I loved. And I do know what it's like to rebuild my life from ashes. So if you want to destroy my gallery, go ahead, try. But it won't fix what's broken inside you. It'll just make it worse. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. Margot, wait. I looked back. She was standing by the window, hugging herself, her face twisted with something that looked almost like anguish. For a moment, the walls between us thinned. I saw her not as the woman who'd betrayed me, but as the girl I'd grown up with, scared, lost, desperate to matter. And I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Then get help, I said. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. But stop blaming me for your choices. Stop punishing me because you're unhappy with yourself. She didn't respond. I left, closing the door softly behind me, and walked back to my car through the rain. I didn't know if my words would make a difference. Probably not. People don't change just because you ask them to. But at least I'd said it. At least I'd tried. The attacks on the gallery stopped after that. The fake accounts went silent. Maybe Isabel had listened. Maybe she just realized it was futile. Either way, I moved forward, preparing for the exhibition, focusing on the work that made me feel whole. But every now and then, I'd catch myself wondering about her, if she was okay, if she'd found any peace, if some part of her still remembered the sisters we used to be. And I wondered if that part of me, the one that still cared, made me strong or just foolish. Is it possible to care about someone who's done nothing but hurt you?
If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss the next chapter of life, love, and redemption.
The exhibition opened on a crisp January evening. The gallery transformed with dramatic lighting and carefully curated pieces that drew gasps and whispers of appreciation from the crowd. Collectors circulated with champagne glasses, critics made notes, and I moved through the space feeling a quiet pride. This was mine, not inherited, not gifted, earned through vision and work and belief in something larger than myself. Metra Arnaud attended, offering subdued congratulations and a reminder that several property sales had finalized, significantly increasing my liquid assets. I nodded politely, barely registering the numbers. Money, I was learning, meant less than I'd expected. It provided security, yes, and freedom from certain worries, but it didn't fill the spaces Olivier and Isabelle had hollowed out inside me. It didn't answer the questions that kept me awake at night. Near the end of the evening, as guests were beginning to filter out into the cool Monaco darkness, I noticed a woman standing alone in front of one of the exhibition's centerpiece works, a large abstract piece about loss and renewal. She was older, perhaps 60, elegantly dressed in understated black, her silver hair cut short. Something about her stillness drew my attention. I approached. Beautiful, isn't it? She turned, and I was struck by her eyes, dark and knowing, carrying weight. It is, though painful too. The artist understood something important about grief. That it transforms us? That it never really ends. She smiled slightly. We just learn to carry it differently. We talked for a while about art and loss and the ways people survive things that should break them. Her name was Veronique Moreau. She was a psychologist, semi-retired, who'd spent decades working with families navigating betrayal and estrangement. She didn't ask about my life, but somehow I found myself telling her anyway. About Olivier, about Isabelle, about the will and the letter, and the strange, hollow victory that came with inheriting everything. Veronique listened without interrupting, without offering easy platitudes or quick solutions. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, considering her words. "You're grieving multiple losses," she said finally. "Not just your marriage, but your sister, the version of your family you thought you had, the future you'd imagined. That's complicated grief. It doesn't resolve cleanly. Does it resolve at all? That depends on what resolution means to you. If you're waiting for Isabelle to become the sister you needed, you'll wait forever. She can only become who she's capable of being. The question is whether you can accept that and still move forward." Her words stayed with me long after the exhibition ended, after the last guests departed and I locked up the gallery. I walked home slowly through the quiet streets, past the harbor where yachts rocked gently at their moorings, and thought about acceptance. I'd wanted Isabelle to apologize, to show remorse, to somehow undo the damage she'd caused. But that was never going to happen. She was too trapped in her own bitterness, too consumed by what she'd lost to see clearly what she'd destroyed. Waiting for her to change was like waiting for the sea to stop moving, futile and painful. But maybe I didn't need her to change. Maybe I just needed to let go of the hope that she would. Spring arrived gradually, bringing warmer winds and brighter light. I sold most of Olivier's properties, keeping only the small villa in Cap d'Isle that overlooked the water. It felt peaceful there, removed from Monaco's constant bustle, a place where I could breathe and think without distraction. I established a foundation in my mother's name, dedicated to supporting young women pursuing careers in the arts. It felt right, using Olivier's fortune for something meaningful, something that honored the woman who'd raised us both with love and hope. I didn't tell Isabelle about the foundation, but I made sure a portion of its funding was set aside for women who'd faced significant personal hardship. Maybe someday she'd benefit from it, even if she never knew I'd created it. One afternoon in late March, I received an unexpected letter. No return address, handwritten on plain paper. I almost threw it away, assuming it was another piece of hate mail from someone still convinced I'd somehow stolen what I had. But something made me open it. "Margot, I've been in therapy for 3 months now. It was your suggestion, though I doubt you thought I'd actually follow through. I'm writing because my therapist suggested it might help, not for you, but for me. She says I need to acknowledge what I did instead of just burying it under resentment. I was wrong about everything. I convinced myself that taking Olivier was justified, that you'd be fine, that my needs were more important than your pain. I told myself I deserved the life he could give me, that I was just doing what anyone would do in my position. But that was a lie. I knew it was wrong. I knew it would hurt you. I just didn't care enough to stop myself. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. I'm just acknowledging the truth. You were right when you said I lost everything myself. I did. I destroyed our relationship for money and status, and in the end, I didn't even get to keep those things. All I have now is the memory of what I did to you, and it's heavier than I expected. I don't know if I'll ever be someone you can trust again. Probably not. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm sorry, truly, deeply sorry. Isabelle. I read the letter 3 times, sitting at my kitchen table while the afternoon light slanted through the windows. It wasn't a perfect apology. It didn't undo anything, but it was honest. For the first time since this nightmare began, Isabelle had looked at herself clearly and admitted what she'd done. That had to mean something, didn't it? I didn't respond immediately. I needed time to sit with it, to figure out what I felt. Eventually, I wrote back, a short note thanking her for her honesty and wishing her well in therapy. I didn't offer reconciliation or suggest we meet. I wasn't ready for that. Maybe I never would be. But I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I stopped checking over my shoulder for her shadow. I stopped waiting for the next attack, the next betrayal. I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, she was finally taking responsibility for her own life. And, slowly, carefully, I began to forgive. Not her, not yet, but myself. For loving Olivier despite his flaws, for trusting Isabelle despite the warning signs, for being hurt in ways I couldn't control. Because in the end, forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about freeing myself from the weight of carrying their mistakes. Can you heal from betrayal without reconciliation, or does some part of it always remain unresolved? Summer came to Monaco like a gentle insistence, filling the city with tourists and yacht parties and the kind of careless joy that only exists when you're far from home and responsibility feels optional. I found myself more comfortable in the rhythms of my life now. Mornings at the gallery, afternoons sometimes at the villa in Cap d'Al, evenings reading or walking along the port, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and rose. Veronique had become something like a friend. We met occasionally for coffee, conversations that ranged from art to philosophy to the messy business of being human. She never pressed me for details I wasn't ready to share, never offered advice I hadn't asked for. She just listened, observed, reflected back what she saw. "You're different," she said one afternoon as we sat outside a cafe near the Jardin Exotique, lighter, less guarded. I considered that. She was right. The constant tension I'd carried for so long, the anger, the hurt, the bitter need for answers, had faded. Not disappeared, but softened into something manageable. I could think about Olivier now without my chest tightening. I could say Isabelle's name without tasting resentment. "I think I'm finally tired of being angry," I admitted. Veronique smiled. "Good. Anger is useful for a while. It protects us, gives us energy to survive. But eventually it becomes a weight. It takes courage to set it down." I thought about that word. Courage. For so long, I'd believed courage meant confrontation, standing up to Isabelle, demanding accountability. But maybe the real courage was in letting go, in choosing peace over vindication, in accepting that some stories don't end with justice or closure, they just end. I hadn't heard from Isabelle since her letter. Part of me worried about her, wondered if therapy was helping, if she'd found any stability. But I didn't reach out. We both needed distance, space to become whoever we were going to be, without constantly reflecting each other's worst moments. Then, one morning in July, Maître Arnaud called. "There's been a development," he said, his tone careful. "Isabelle has filed a legal challenge to the will." My stomach dropped. What? On what grounds? "She's claiming undue influence, that Olivier wasn't of sound mind when he changed the will, that he was manipulated or coerced." By who? I hadn't spoken to him in years. "I know, and we have documentation proving that. But she's hired an attorney, and they're pushing forward. It's likely to fail, but it will be unpleasant, public. I wanted to prepare you." After we hung up, I sat in my office staring at nothing. So this was it. Isabelle's apology had been temporary, a moment of clarity that had faded as quickly as it came. Now she was back to attacking, to grasping for what she thought she deserved, to refusing to accept the consequences of her own choices. I felt exhausted more than angry. How many times would we do this? How many battles would we fight over a fortune neither of us had earned? At what point did it become pathological, this refusal to let go? The legal challenge moved slowly through the system, generating exactly the kind of public attention Maître Arnaud had warned about. Society pages ran stories about the sisters fighting over the Beaumont fortune, reducing our entire complicated, painful history to tabloid drama. People who didn't know us took sides, debated online, turned our trauma into entertainment. I hated every moment of it. The hearing was scheduled for September. Maître Arnaud assembled a team, gathered evidence, prepared to systematically dismantle Isabelle's claims. I met with them dutifully, answered their questions, provided what they needed. But inside, I felt hollow. This wasn't justice. This was just damage extending outward, endless ripples from a single moment of betrayal. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Isabel, about the girl she'd been before jealousy and ambition twisted her into someone unrecognizable. I thought about our mother, who'd loved us both so much, who'd wanted us to take care of each other. What would she think if she could see us now, facing each other across a courtroom, strangers wearing familiar faces? I showed up early to the courthouse, a modern building near the Plastic Casino. The room was smaller than I'd expected, less dramatic than the settings you see in movies. Just a judge, lawyers, a few observers, and Isabel, sitting at the opposite table with her attorney, looking thinner and paler than ever. Our eyes met briefly before the proceedings began. I tried to read her expression, looking for regret or determination or anything that might help me understand what she was thinking. But her face was blank, shuttered. She looked away first. The hearing took most of the day. Isabel's attorney argued that Olivier had been ill, possibly medicated, potentially not fully competent when he changed his will. Our side presented medical records showing he'd been clear-minded, testimony from witnesses, the letter he'd written, everything that proved his decision had been intentional and informed. I watched Isabel's face as they dismantled her case piece by piece. She sat very still, her hands folded on the table, her expression never changing. But I saw the moment she realized she was going to lose. Her shoulders sagged slightly, something in her posture deflating. Not dramatically, not obviously, but I knew her well enough to recognize defeat. The judge ruled swiftly. Olivier's will stood. There was no evidence of undue influence, no grounds for contestation. Isabel's challenge was dismissed with prejudice. Outside the courthouse, away from attorneys and observers, I found Isabel sitting on a bench, staring at nothing. I should have walked away. I had every reason to. But something pulled me over, made me sit down beside her. "I'm sorry," she said after a long silence. "For the hearing or for everything?" "Both." She turned to look at me, and I was shocked by how hollow her eyes looked. "I don't know who I am anymore, Margot. Without Olivier's money, without the life I built, I don't know what's left." "Maybe that's the point," I said quietly. "Maybe you have to lose everything false before you can find what's real. That's easy for you to say. You have everything. I have money. That's not the same thing." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I have peace, Isabel. I have work I love, a life I built, and the knowledge that I didn't destroy anyone to get here. That's what I have, and it's worth more than any inheritance." She looked away, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I don't know if I can do that, be that person." "Then figure it out, but stop blaming me for your choices. Stop making me the villain in your story. I'm not your enemy. I never was." I stood to leave, but she caught my hand. "Wait, please." Her voice broke. "I know I don't deserve it, but could we try? Not now, maybe not for a long time, but someday? Could we try to be sisters again?" I looked down at her, this broken, desperate woman who'd caused me so much pain, and I felt something crack open inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. The faint, fragile hope that maybe, with time and work and honesty, we could find our way back to each other. I let her there, walking out into the warm September afternoon, feeling lighter than I had in years. Redemption, I realized, isn't something you give someone else. It's something they have to find for themselves. All you can do is decide whether you'll be there when they do. Is it possible to rebuild trust once it's been shattered, or are some breaks permanent?
Autumn returned to Monaco with cool breezes and golden light that made everything feel gentler, more forgiving. I'd found a routine that suited me, working at the gallery, taking weekends at the villa, slowly building friendships that weren't based on social status or obligation. For the first time since the divorce, I felt like myself again. Not the person I'd been before Olivier, but someone new, someone stronger. I hadn't seen Isabel since the courthouse.
Part of me wondered if I ever would. But I'd meant what I said. The door wasn't closed, just carefully guarded. If she wanted reconciliation, she'd have to prove she was capable of it. And I would wait, patiently, but not endlessly, to see what she chose. The gallery continued to thrive. We'd secured representation for several emerging artists whose work was garnering international attention. And I'd been approached about opening a second location in Nice. The idea excited me: expansion, growth, the chance to create something even larger and more meaningful. One October afternoon, as I was reviewing proposals in my office, my phone rang. Unknown number, Monaco area code. I hesitated, then answered. Margot Leclerc? Yes? This is Dr. Laurent from Princess Grace Hospital. I'm calling about Isabelle Beaumont. You're listed as her emergency contact. My heart stopped. What happened? She was brought in this morning, an overdose. She's stable now, but she's asking for you. I drove to the hospital in a daze, my mind racing through possibilities. Accidental? Intentional? Either way, it meant Isabelle had hit some kind of bottom, a place so dark she'd reached for oblivion rather than face another day. The hospital was quiet, sterile white walls and the soft beep of monitors. Dr. Laurent met me in the hallway, a kind-faced woman in her 50s who led me to Isabelle's room with gentle professionalism. She's going to be okay physically, the doctor said, but mentally, emotionally, she needs help, serious, sustained help. I've recommended an inpatient program. Whether she agrees is up to her. Isabelle was awake when I entered, propped up against pillows, an IV in her arm. She looked impossibly small and fragile, all sharp angles and pale skin. When she saw me, tears welled up in her eyes. I'm so sorry you had to come. I pulled a chair beside her bed, my own throat tight. What happened, Isabelle? I don't know. Her voice was barely a whisper. I couldn't anymore. Couldn't keep pretending I was okay. Couldn't keep fighting. Couldn't keep waking up to a life I didn't recognize. I thought maybe it would be easier to just stop. Easier for who? For everyone. For you. She looked at me, devastation written across her face. You'd be free, really free, without me constantly dragging you back into the past. I felt tears burning in my own eyes. That's not freedom, Isabelle. That's loss. And I've had enough of that. But I hurt you. I ruined everything. Yes, you did. But you're still my sister. The words surprised me as I said them, but they were true. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and pain and years of damage, she was still my sister. Blood and history and the 1,000 small memories that connected us couldn't be erased just because she'd made terrible choices. We sat in silence for a while, just breathing together in that sterile room, while machines beeped and footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Dr. Laurent told me about the program, Isabelle said eventually. Inpatient treatment, 3 months. Are you going to do it? I don't know. I'm scared. Of what? Of finding out there's nothing underneath all the anger and resentment. That without those things, I'm just empty. I reached over and took her hand. Then you fill yourself up with something better. But you have to want to. Nobody can do it for you. Will you visit me if I go? I thought about that carefully. I couldn't promise unlimited support, couldn't let myself become responsible for her recovery. That was her work to do. But I could offer something small, something that might matter. Once a month, I said, if you're genuinely trying. But Isabelle, I need you to understand something. I can't save you. I can support you, but I can't fix you. That's on you. She nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I know, I do, and I'm going to try, really try this time. Isabelle checked into the treatment program the following week. I helped her move in, brought her a few personal items, photos from when we were children, a book our mother used to read us, small tokens of the life we'd shared before everything fell apart. The weeks that followed were strange. I'd grown so accustomed to Isabelle as a source of conflict and pain that her absence felt disorienting.
but also liberating. I could focus on my own life without constantly bracing for the next crisis, the next betrayal. I visited her once in November, as promised. She looked better, healthier, more present. We didn't talk about the past much. Instead, we talked about the future, about what she wanted to do when she left the program, about how she might rebuild a life that felt authentic instead of performative. I think I want to go back to school, she said. Study psychology, maybe. Help other people who've made the mistakes I did. That sounds good. Meaningful. I'll need to work, save money. I don't have anything left. I know. I'd already decided what I was going to do, but I'd waited for the right moment. I've set up a trust. It'll cover your education and basic living expenses. But there are conditions. You have to maintain your treatment plan, stay in therapy, check in with your program coordinator monthly. If you relapse into any of your old patterns, the funding stops. She stared at me. Margot, I can't. That's too much. It's an investment in the person you're trying to become, but you have to do the work. I can't do it for you. I will, I promise. I left that day feeling cautiously hopeful, not certain, not naive enough to believe everything would be perfect, but hopeful, because Isabel was finally taking responsibility for herself, finally choosing to change rather than just saying she would. December arrived cold and clear, the kind of weather that makes Monaco feel magical. I spent Christmas Eve at the villa, alone but not lonely, watching the sea turn silver under a full moon. I thought about the year that had passed, the will, the confrontation, the legal battle, the hospital, so much pain and drama and heartbreak. But also growth, healing, the slow, difficult work of learning to forgive without forgetting, to love without enabling, to set boundaries without building walls. I poured myself wine and raised my glass to the darkness, to my mother's memory, to the complicated, messy, beautiful process of becoming whole again. And I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, next year would be gentler for both of us. How much of ourselves do we sacrifice trying to save people who aren't ready to be saved?
Spring arrived again, bringing with it a sense of renewal that felt almost symbolic. The city was in bloom, tourists flooding back into Monaco with their cameras in wonder, and I found myself more present than I'd been in years. Truly present, not lost in the past or anxious about the future, just here, experiencing each moment as it came. Isabel completed her program in March. I went to her discharge meeting, sat with her and her therapist as they discussed the transition plan, outpatient therapy, support groups, regular check-ins. She'd gained weight, which suited her. The sharp, hungry look was gone, replaced by something softer, more grounded. I've been accepted to the university in Nice, she told me over coffee the following week. Psychology program. I start in September. That's wonderful. It feels surreal, like someone else's life. She stirred her coffee absently. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for me to sabotage it somehow. That's normal. Healing isn't linear. You'll have setbacks. I know, my therapist says the same thing. She looked up at me. Thank you for the trust, for visiting, for not giving up on me entirely. I didn't do it for you, I said honestly. I did it for the sister I used to have, and for myself, because I needed to know I'd tried everything before I walked away. And now I'm watching to see who you become. The jury's still out. She smiled slightly. Fair enough. We settled into a cautious rhythm after that. Monthly lunches, brief phone calls to check in, nothing too intense or demanding. Slowly, carefully, we were learning how to be in each other's lives without causing damage. It wasn't the relationship we'd had as children. That was gone, irretrievable. But it was something, a fragile, honest connection built on truth instead of obligation. The gallery continued to flourish. We opened the nice location in May, a beautiful space in the old town with exposed stone walls and flooding natural light. The opening night was packed, artists and collectors and critics, all drawn by the quality of work we'd cultivated. I moved through the crowd feeling proud and grateful and a little overwhelmed by how far I'd come.
Veronique was there, offering her quiet support and thoughtful observations. Near the end of the evening, she pulled me aside. "You've done remarkable work here, not just with the gallery, with yourself. I had good guidance. Guidance is only useful if you're willing to follow it. You did the hardest part. You let go of needing things to be different than they were. That takes real strength." I thought about that later, standing alone in the empty gallery after everyone had left, surrounded by art that spoke to transformation and growth and the painful beauty of being human. Veronique was right. I'd spent so long wishing Olivier had chosen differently, wishing Isabelle had been a different person, wishing my life had unfolded according to the plan I'd imagined. But none of that wishing had changed anything. It had just kept me trapped in disappointment, unable to see what was actually in front of me. Letting go, truly letting go, meant accepting that the past was fixed, unchangeable. It meant focusing on what I could control, my own responses, my own choices, my own healing. That acceptance had freed me in ways I hadn't expected. It had allowed me to build something new, something that was entirely mine. Summer passed in a blur of work and quiet joy. I dated occasionally, nothing serious, just gentle explorations of connection without pressure or expectation. I learned to enjoy my own company, to take myself to dinner or the theater without feeling like I was missing something. Isabelle started university in September. She sent me a photo from her first day, standing outside the lecture hall, looking nervous but determined. I sent back encouragement and a reminder that she was capable of this, that she'd already done the hardest work by choosing to change. We had dinner in October at a small bistro in Nice not far from campus. She talked about her classes, her professors, the other students. She was engaged, animated, in a way I hadn't seen since we were teenagers. This wasn't performance or pretense. She genuinely cared about what she was learning. "I'm studying family systems theory," she said. "It's fascinating and horrible. I see our entire relationship in every case study. That must be difficult." "It is, but also clarifying. I understand now how I used you, not just as a scapegoat, but as a way to avoid looking at myself. If I could make you the problem, I didn't have to acknowledge my own issues. And now I'm trying to take responsibility for all of it. The good, the bad, the parts I'm ashamed of. It's exhausting, honestly, but necessary." We walked along the Promenade des Anglais after dinner, the sea dark and quiet beside us. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace between us. Not forgiveness exactly, that was still a work in progress, but acceptance, a recognition that we were both flawed, both trying, both capable of change. "Do you think we'll ever be close again?" Isabelle asked suddenly. "The way we used to be?" I considered the question carefully. "I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe what we had before was based on things that aren't true anymore, assumptions and roles that don't fit who we are now. So what do we have instead? A chance to build something new, something more honest." I looked over at her. "It won't be what we lost, but it might be something better. If we're patient, if we're willing to keep trying." She nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. "I'd like that." Winter came again, marking nearly 3 years since Olivier's death, since the will, since everything changed. I spent New Year's Eve at the villa, watching fireworks explode over the harbor, feeling content in a way I'd never expected to feel again. I thought about everything I'd learned, about betrayal and resilience, about the difference between justice and revenge, about the hard, unglamorous work of healing. I thought about Olivier's letter, about his belated recognition of what he'd lost. I thought about Isabelle's slow, painful transformation from someone ruled by greed and resentment to someone genuinely trying to become better. And I thought about myself, about the woman I'd been when this all started, naive and trusting and easily broken, and the woman I'd become, stronger, wiser, more careful with my heart, but not closed off from possibility. The phone rang as midnight approached. "Isabelle." "Happy New Year," she said. "Happy New Year. I just wanted to tell you I'm grateful for everything, for not giving up on me when you had every reason to, for giving me a chance to be better. You gave yourself that chance. I just held the door open. Still, thank you. After we hung up, I poured myself champagne and stepped out onto the terrace, feeling the cold air against my face, hearing the distant sounds of celebration echoing across the water. The future stretched out before me, uncertain, unwritten, full of possibility. And for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't afraid of it. I was ready to keep building, keep growing, keep becoming whoever I was meant to be. Because redemption, real redemption, isn't about returning to who you were before everything went wrong. It's about accepting what happened, learning from it, and choosing to move forward anyway. And that choice, I'd learned, was the most powerful one of all. If forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves, not the people who hurt us, then why does it still feel so hard to let go?
I'm writing this from the terrace of the villa in Cap d'Isle, watching the sunset over the Mediterranean. The water is turning that particular shade of gold that makes everything look like a painting, like something too beautiful to be real. But it is real, all of it. The beauty and the pain, the betrayal and the healing, the darkness and the light that came after. 3 years ago, I lost everything I thought mattered. My marriage crumbled. My sister betrayed me in the worst way possible. The life I'd built, the future I'd imagined, all of it dissolved in a single terrible moment. I remember standing outside that bedroom door, my hand on the handle, knowing that opening it would change everything. I almost turned around, almost walked away, but I didn't. I stepped into the truth, no matter how painful it was. And now, looking back, I can see that moment not as an ending, but as a beginning. The beginning of learning who I really was beneath the roles and expectations. The beginning of understanding that my worth wasn't tied to being someone's wife or someone's good sister. The beginning of building something that was entirely, authentically mine. Olivier's death brought an unexpected justice, one I never asked for but couldn't refuse. His will wasn't about making me rich. It was about acknowledging, finally, what he'd destroyed and what he'd taken for granted. It was his apology, imperfect and posthumous, but real nonetheless. I still have his letter. I read it sometimes, not out of nostalgia or longing, but as a reminder that people are complicated, that someone can love you and hurt you, that they can fail you and still, in their own way, try to make it right. Isabel is the hardest part of this story to make sense of. My sister, my betrayer, my mirror showing me everything I didn't want to see about jealousy and ambition and what people are capable of when they're desperate. For a long time, I hated her. Then I pitied her. Now I'm not sure what I feel. Maybe it's compassion. Maybe it's just exhaustion. Or maybe it's the recognition that she's as much a victim of her own choices as I am of hers. She's still in Nice, finishing her degree, working part-time at a community center helping women navigate family crises. She calls every few weeks. We meet for lunch sometimes. The conversations are still careful, still guarded. We're like two people learning a new language together, stumbling over words and meanings, trying to communicate across a divide that might never fully close. But we're trying. That has to count for something. I won't pretend this has a perfect ending, because it doesn't. Real life doesn't wrap up neatly with all questions answered and all wounds healed. Some scars remain. Some relationships never fully recover. Some betrayals leave marks that time can soften but never erase. But here's what I've learned. You can survive the unsurvivable. You can be shattered and still piece yourself back together, maybe not into your original shape, but into something stronger, something more honestly yours. You can be betrayed by the people you love most and still find a way to love again. Not them necessarily, but yourself, your life, the possibility of connection without naivety. I learned that justice doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes it comes quietly, without fanfare or confrontation, just a correction of scales, a balancing that happens when we're not even looking. Olivier's will was poetic in its precision, giving Isabel exactly what her betrayal was worth, nothing more, nothing less.
and giving me not wealth, but freedom. The freedom to build whatever life I wanted without depending on anyone else's approval or permission. Most importantly, I learned that redemption is a choice, not a one-time decision, but 1,000 small ones made every day. The choice to get out of bed when grief makes you want to disappear. The choice to try again when trust has been shattered. The choice to forgive, not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve peace. The choice to let go of bitterness, even when it feels like the only thing keeping you standing. Some days are still hard. I still have moments when I wonder what my life would look like if Olivier had chosen differently, if Isabelle had been the sister I needed. But those moments come less often now. They don't define me the way they used to. Instead, I wake up in this villa overlooking the sea, and I feel grateful for the gallery and the work I love, for the friendships I've built with people who see me clearly and choose to stay anyway, for Veronique and her quiet wisdom, for the second chance I've been given to create a life that's truly mine. And yes, for Isabelle, for the possibility that we might find our way back to something resembling sisterhood, even if it's a quieter, more careful version than what we had before. For the opportunity to watch her struggle and grow and become someone better than she was. That's its own kind of redemption, not for me, but maybe for both of us. I don't have all the answers. I don't think anyone does, but I've stopped waiting for them. I've stopped waiting for closure or perfect healing or the kind of justice that makes everything make sense. Life doesn't work that way. People don't work that way. What I have instead is this: a quiet afternoon in spring, the sound of the sea outside my window, the knowledge that I survived what should have broken me and came out stronger on the other side. The understanding that I don't need anyone else to complete me or validate me or make my life meaningful. I can do that myself. Today, when I look in the mirror, I see someone I'm proud of. Not perfect, not unscathed, but resilient. Someone who faced the worst kinds of betrayal and chose to keep living, keep loving, keep hoping anyway. Someone who learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about refusing to let the past control your future. And that, I think, is the real victory, not the money or the properties or the poetic justice of Olivier's will, but this: the ability to stand on my own terrace, watching the sun set over the Mediterranean, and feel at peace with exactly who I am and exactly how I got here. The journey isn't over, it never really is, but I'm okay with that now, because I finally understand that healing isn't about reaching some finish line where everything is perfect and nothing hurts anymore. It's about learning to carry your pain with grace, to acknowledge your scars without being defined by them, to move forward even when the path isn't clear. So here I am, 3 years older, infinitely wiser, still writing my own story one careful choice at a time. And whatever comes next, whether Isabelle and I find reconciliation or whether we remain forever at arm's length, whether I find love again or remain happily independent, I know I'll be okay. Because I've already survived the hardest part, losing everything I thought I needed, and discovering that what I actually needed was already inside me all along. The sea keeps rolling in, the sun keeps setting and rising, and I keep moving forward, one breath at a time, one day at a time. And that, finally, is enough.
If this story touched your heart and you'd like to support this work, consider buying me a coffee on Ko-fi. Every small gesture helps bring more stories like this one to life. Thank you for listening, and remember, your kindness makes stories possible.